Alright, in this particular program we're going to look at random numbers for lab 10b, and we're going to do step number 1 first. So we're going to create the code to generate a random number from 1 to 100, and we're going to display the random number utilizing a function. So I already got you the starter code, and to start you out with this, the template already has a configuration here that we are importing a random module which is going to generate random numbers, and this is how we go about doing the code. So we're going to write the code down below here, and before we start out we're going to basically look at the main program that we have a message header, and when we run it right now what we'll see basically is the header portion, and that's pretty much it. So again, the first step here, we're going to create a new function, and we're going to come down here below and we're going to create a function called my_randnum. And if we're going to run this particular code right now, let me clear the code here and run it. As you can see, we have an error. So let's take a look at the errors. So we have line 66 and 56. So if we see 66, and this is why I end up freezing the code, because there's nothing that is wrong here. It's calling the main function over here. And then we have line 56 in my code, and it wants to basically call this function, but that is not defined. So if we come up over here then and we enter our parameters here, so this is how we're going to define our function. Now let's run it and see what happens. And yep, we got another error, and this time on line 55. So if we scroll down here, line 55, now it's basically identifying that something's wrong with the main function. Well, it is and it is not, because it's going through and executing everything through, but the problem is we created a function over here, we defined the function over here, but we didn't write any code. So anytime we're writing blocks of code of anything and we don't know exactly what's going to go in there, we're going to utilize a keyword called pass, and it's going to be a placeholder for an empty block. When we run this now, let's clear the code, run it through here. Now you see there is no error and the system runs. So in a couple labs, what I've done is to make sure that my code works for the template, I had the word pass, and I had also information to delete that when you start your code. So now we're going to be ready to write our code, and here what we're going to do then is we're going to print, I'm going to get a number from 1 to 100. Our next line then is this particular syntax, and let me go over what the system is doing here. Our num is going to be the variable that is going to be stored from this particular configuration, random.randint from 1 to 100, and that is basically from the syntax that we're importing from here. We're importing random, and that is the syntax to generate a number between 1 to 100 and then assign it to our num. So our next line then is going to be that print statement, print the random number is our num, and let's go ahead and let me clear the screen and run the code here. So this time we got 76, run it one more time, 90, and this syntax definitely works. So let's take a look at step 2. Step 2, we're going to update the code to create a new function where the user is prompting to enter 2 numbers. We're going to pass those numbers to the function that we just created, so we need to make some modifications to our code over here. We're going to return that particular number, and we're going to print the number from the second function that we're writing. So now we're going to come down to here, and we're going to be writing some code for this particular syntax. So first we're going to define our function, and I'm going to call it get number. We're going to perform an input statement to prompt the user to enter a number. Now again, this is not doing any kind of error checking. For validation, in a future code we'll do that. We'll prompt the user to enter yet another number, and then from there, this particular syntax that's being displayed is it's going to be calling the myRand number, and it's going to pass user num1 and user num2. So we need to make some modifications to how this now is being interpreted. Let's finish off the code here, and then we're going to print what the number is when it's all outputted. Now coming back over here, what we need to do then is pass the variables, passing user num1 and user num2, and we need to make a modification to that. So here we're going to say num1 and 2, and we'll take this and we'll specify here, we'll create a updated print statement where this is going to be num1 to num2, and we need to make a modification that this is an F string. And then we're going to change this, instead of hard coding a number here, it's going to be our user number. So that's going to be num1 and that's going to be num2. We don't need to utilize this anymore, and we're not doing this because all we're doing is this particular function here. It now is going to actually return that particular number back to our function call. So what's happening with this part is once the function is called, passing these parameters up to here, it's going to output the information. It's then going to create a random number from the user inputs, and this return is returning it back to here, which then is being assigned to random here, and then we're going to print the statement there. So let's go ahead and take a look at the code and how it works. Let me clear the screen and let's run the code. Oop, and looks like we got an error. And let's see what's going on here. And that particular error, if we scroll down here, so we started out with this random, and this is not the correct syntax because we want to actually utilize this function, and that particular function actually calls this. So we just need to make a modification here to get the number, and let's go ahead and clear the screen and then run the code. Enter a number, we'll do 10 and 55. There we go. Run it one more time. We'll do 99 to 200. All right, so the program is working. All right, so that is it for this particular program.